All right, and maybe we could go around and have everybody introduce themselves. I'll just call people out as or maybe we'll start with you, Deb, and you can just call on someone and pass it to them. How's that?
Fine. Good evening, everyone. I'm Deborah Giro. I'm the interim superintendent. Molly?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Molly Cohen, and I'm the interim deputy superintendent. I'll pass it to Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Lonis. I work at Pickering Middle School.
And Karen, you gonna pass it to someone?
I'll pass it to Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Ritterhouse, principal of Pickering Middle School. I'm glad to be here, and I'll pass it along to Mr. Green.
Hi, I'm Chris Green. I am a teacher at Pickering Middle School. And I'll pass it to Jess Burrell.
Hi, I'm Jess Burrell. I'm a special ed teacher at Pickering Middle School. And I will pass it to Priscilla.
Hi, I'm Priscilla Ches. I am a Spanish teacher at Pickering Middle School, and I will pass it on to Jessica Gerardo.
Hi, I'm Jessica Gerardo. I'm a special education teacher at Marshall Middle School. And I will pass it on to, I think the only one is Flory.
Yep, Flora, you there? Looks like we have a couple more. Hi, Dina. Hi, Andrea. We are just introducing ourselves. If you can hear us and can say a quick hello, maybe Dina.
Hi, I'm Dina.
Driving.
How are you guys? Just en route to a destination, but I'm here. So
Okay, thank you, Dina.
thank you.
And Andrea, are you there? All right. Well, maybe we'll hear from Andrea and Flory in a little bit. So we're together until 8 o'clock, and my name is David Stephen. I'm the facilitator, educational programmer on the design team. I'm with New Vista, but I'm working with Raymond Design Associates, and I'm going to pull up my screen right now. All right, can everybody see that okay? Thumbs up if you can see the screen okay? All right, great. So tonight we're going to review not all of the workshop one notes, but we'll look at the learning goals that were brainstormed during our small groups and see where we ended up. We're going to do a kind of an interactive activity based on a SWOT analysis, but replacing the weaknesses and threats with challenges and goals. So we've got strengths, challenges, opportunities, and goals, and thinking about just a snapshot again of Pickering. What we're trying to do in this process is learn as much as possible about the school and what you do and how you do it, and how we can best provide you with the building that will support what you do now and also in decades to come. We're going to be talking tonight about design patterns, and I'm going to be introducing a whole lot of best practice kind of examples of schools that have been designed and built in the last 5 years, many of them, but not all, through the MSBA process, and talking about sort of what those patterns are, what those approaches are. And what we really want to do is, one, get you excited about what's possible, two, see what really is resonating with you in terms of what is most seems most kind of attractive as you think about your own context and the needs of Pickering as a school, and also to create a common language that we're all going to share about what your design priorities are. So last time we worked on your educational priorities. We're then going to get into small groups. We'll take a break somewhere there in the middle, and we're going to get into small groups and do an activity around prioritizing the design patterns. And so I sent out an email earlier with the handout for tonight, which is has those design patterns on it. But I'm also going to place it in the chat for anybody that may not have had it. Also, I sent out in that email today the notes from workshop 1, but I'll also place them. I've already placed them in the chat, but for anyone who's arrived since I did that, I think I have to place it again so everybody has access. So this visioning process, it's part of a 3 workshop series, and it does sort of build upon itself. So we started out talking about educational vision and priorities. We're still gonna do that today, some at the beginning, and then we're gonna phase into talking about design. Next time we meet, we'll talk about guiding principles, big picture priorities for what the project wants to be. And we'll also talk about key spaces and adjacencies and do some diagramming. And this all feeds into your educational plan that the district is writing. So what the MSBA wants to see is that there is an alignment between the language that you're using to describe what you do now and what you want to do in the future and the kind of spaces you need that come from the visioning. We've talked to your educational team to get the lay of the land. We're calling this the Educational Working Group, and we'll be doing a community forum on November 30th, an hour and a half in the evening, where we are planning to share the results of the first 2 workshops that we've done with you. Here are the highlights of the priorities and the design ideas, and get feedback from the community. And the workshop 1 notes are much more detailed than what I'm going to describe tonight. And they're arranged so that there are highlights that you can skim through it and see all of the themes that come up. But if you want to go deeper, you can certainly do that. And so we're going to start out by talking about your future ready learning goals. And so what we did last time, for anybody that wasn't here, we talked about sort of what future ready teaching and learning and 21st skills mean to you all, and what they look like in practice at your schools, and particularly at your middle schools. And then we did an activity in small groups where we had a handout with about 15 different examples of things that different schools and networks are thinking about as priorities for learning 21st century skills, or some people describe it as a portrait of a graduate. And then in your groups, you talked about what resonated with you and made a list of those things. So what I did is I took all 3 lists. For any time that one of these things appeared on a small group list as a priority, I gave it 6 votes, and then I put them in buckets. And this is very subjective, and it's an iterative process. If you were really going to do this as a school or as a district, it would be something that would take you a while to figure out what you really wanted to say. But for the purposes of this, what we want to do is just make sure that before we start looking at all the design choices that you have, that we just get some common, kind of consensus on what it is that's important for kids to know and be able to do, what's important for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, read through them. You can see them. But then I have another page where I'm going to ask you to give feedback, and the feedback will be, what strikes you about this list? Does this seem like an appropriate list for what you value within the district? Is this something are there things that are missing? Are there ways that you would rearrange things? Now, I put the votes here. If you actually were going to have a poster like this, you wouldn't prioritize it like that, but it is interesting to see what floats to the top. So right up at the top is the idea of empathy and humility, which when you were talking about middle school kids, maybe isn't a surprise, right? That's really important to you all, that students are developing that ability. Social emotional learning connected with that, and that might be your title instead of empathy and humility, but empathy and humility was used a number of times in your small group, so I put that as the title. People also mentioned diversity and inclusion, service and compassion, and citizenship, so I kind of put that all in that one bucket. And then communication and collaboration in terms of working in teams, developing interpersonal skills, and leadership skills. That was second on the list. Critical thinking, inventive and creative thinking. I put under here considering multiple perspectives, as part of that. That could be connected to lots of different things. It could be connected to communication and collaboration as well, or even future ready, like global awareness. But we didn't have a lot under critical thinking, so I put it there. And then real world problem solving with 12 votes, asking good questions, future ready, big picture views. Actually, we repeated future ready, so we'll take that out. And then self-directed learning, prioritizing, planning, and managing, developing one's executive functioning skills, learning how to learn, self-management, and then finally future ready, which I connected to global awareness and being adaptive and agile. So, so with that, I'm gonna go to the next page. Look, I don't know why it's not moving. Okay, so for those folks that weren't with us last week, we're using a platform called Mentimeter to give feedback, and this is anonymous and the feedback, but we're going to be able to see it visually. And what you want to do is go to menti.com and type in this code. When you get there, you'll see a heart. If you could press the heart, it'll let us know that you're there. You can also do this on your phone and using the QR code here, and it's easy to do that as well. I'll leave it up for another minute or so. And we put it in the chat as well in case anybody loses the link, but all of the interactive pages are going to have it up at the top here. So again, you go to www.menti.com and you should come to a page where it asks you to punch into a number code. And that's what you do. Okay, so yeah, so here's the prompt. I'm leaving this up here. We're going to be able to scroll over and see what people are saying. But what strikes you about these learning goals for Pickering Middle School students? Is there anything that should be changed or be added? Does this seem like a good reflection of things that you value as a district and as a school? So let's see what people are thinking. And I will, once we get off, I'll change the future ready. I'll get rid of that because we already have it under here. I'll just scroll over and we can see what people are thinking here. I think the two most important are future ready and the social emotional learning. Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with that. I like that the social emotional is at the top. I feel like that's the way things are moving and what people in the world need most. I wonder if we should maybe change it to social emotional instead of the empathy and humility. Do you think that's something that would be a more kind of readily understood? Any thoughts on that? People can just unmute and we can actually talk.
I would say yes to that. I think
Yeah.
social emotional learning is the term we use more often than anything else.
Okay, yeah, it is the term of, yes, that makes a lot of sense, Deb. Okay, I might add project-based learning in the real-world problem-solving section. I think that would be great. I think it focuses on all the areas that are needed at our school. I like how they're grouped. And then the bullets give a clearer focus on what that category means. Great. SEL, diversity, real-world problems, so self-directed learning collaboration via academic discourse aligned directly with district goals. Okay. And feels like critical thinking should be higher. Okay. And that's certainly something we can, play around with. Or if you ever wanted to use this, I actually think, especially in middle school environments, these things can be really helpful to have those kind of big picture goals that a school is using as kind of a common language, that they are making things kind of metacognitive for kids. Just helps kids understand and connect sort of what they're doing to maybe why they're doing it. So I will make some of those tweaks for version 2.0. This is version 1.0. So now what I wanted to do, and we're going to stay on Mentimeter, is we're going to do this SCOG analysis. So strengths, challenges, opportunities, and goals. So I wanted to ask you what you see as Pickering Middle School's greatest strengths in terms of its educational programs. Like, what is it that you think is at the core of Pickering Middle School's, programs? What it's important for the design team to know about you, so that they can create spaces that are going to really support the work that you do, or the work that you want to do. And that could also be kind of aspirational. So student-centered instruction and teachers being collaborative and adaptive. Okay. Teachers putting in a lot of work, small group instruction, collaboration and inclusivity. Dedicated teachers, students' desire to learn and be a part of a community. Are there particular programs that you have in terms of enrichment programs or after-school programs, or STEM and STEAM, things like that? It'd be interesting to hear about that. Teacher and student collaboration, teachers creating lessons for all our students. So it sounds like the teacher collaboration and kind of like commitment are the core strength. Is teacher teaming part of that? Is that a strength? When we talk about collaboration, is there a particular kind of teaming focus? Because that's going to be one of the things that your design team is going to really want to understand better about how to best team your teachers. And I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna encourage people to be in brainstorming mode. The more we get, kind of the more responses we get, the better. There's no right or wrong. It's just interesting to see, what's top of mind for people.
So there is a lot of collaboration time in PLCs.
Yeah.
I would like to see more cross collaboration between special ed and the subject matter that you're teaching.
Okay.
So I'm in a self-contained classroom and I
Yes.
teach math. And
Okay.
it's very difficult to have any collaboration time with the math team
Yes.
unless I go to the monthly meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and to pick up from where Karen left off, Karen, I was thinking the same thing. So we have PLC with content areas, so grade 6 ELA will meet, grade 6 math and so on. But it would be nice to have not only self-contained and inclusion teachers involved in various content PLC, but also teachers that are not one of the 4 major contents. For example, having an art teacher PLC with ELA teachers. But that opportunity comes through scheduling and things like that.
Right.
Yeah. So on the next page, when we do the challenges, I'm going to ask you to submit those so that we can get those in your words. I was trying to log into Mentimeter to take some of these notes, but yeah, so anything like that would be helpful. So let's go to the next one, which is sort of what you see as your greatest educational challenges. So this might be a place to add both of those things, Karen and Kevin. That would be great. And then any other challenges that you can share. Yeah. So, and what was PLCs a strength that we were saying PLCs were a strength?
PLC and collaboration are synonymous, I think.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kevin.
David, if I'm listening correctly, or if I'm here capturing it correctly, I think that strength and challenge is that it's a strength for content teachers because their schedules align, and it's a challenge for interdisciplinary collaboration because their schedules conflict.
Right. So it's this is the collaboration, right?
Right. So Karen's point was that she teaches in the substantially separated math. Her schedule might not align with the general ed math for
Yeah.
them to be able to collaborate.
So I'm just writing this here. So collaboration is a strength for content teachers, but is a challenge for specialists.
Yeah, special ed, yeah.
Special ed.
Mm-hmm.
It's very helpful when you can do that, when you have the time, because it helps you keep up with the curriculum as much as possible at grade level, and then meeting the needs of the diverse learners.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So lack of space, and we're gonna get to it. We're gonna talk about what the challenges of your building are next, but we can certainly talk about them now. So we do the scheduling, PLC, and collaborative time with cross-content teachers. No library or extra rooms, so there are a lot of floating teachers. Okay. No multiple rooms to pull out sped students for testing. Besides smart boards, technology isn't great, and science can't perform cool labs like other schools. Okay, so you need those better labs and classroom spaces. Challenges to collaborate with self-contained special education teachers and content with conflicting schedules. Yes. Is that true for also teachers that are doing that are doing enrichment programming like art or music or stuff like that? Because that's often when content teachers or core teachers have the time to meet, right?
Right.
So,
They're teaching when core content teachers are off.
yes, right. That is a challenge for many, many schools. Okay. All right.
Kevin, could I ask a question about project-based learning? I noticed that was an interest in some slides prior. Is that a challenge in terms of opportunity, space, scheduling?
I think it's a combination of all that, and primarily space and materials and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, project-based learning also requires common planning time. and it requires professional development generally to be, to be done well. So, but well worth it when you can do it. Okay. All right. And now we're going to go to what are the most I think it's good for the design team to understand what you like about your current building, sort of what works well about it. What are the things about it, the qualities of it that you might want to preserve, if anything?
Hi,
And
it's Dina.
we've
I'm
got
just
one
going to
for what
chime in.
what's that, Dina?
I just feel that I think that Marshall Middle School is absolutely beautiful. I just think that we're so used to Pickering with its character that it would be really nice to have some, we talked about this in our small group last time, just like some little areas where we can have the history of the city or the history of the school or something, or some way to reflect and bringing the past into the present. It's just something that I feel passionate about, just because although the building is old, it does have certain things that newer buildings don't. But I'm all up for the change. I just think if we could have some areas where we could remain a little bit of the character of the older building. That's just my opinion.
Right. Very good. Thank you. And we're gonna, when we get to the design patterns coming up next, you're going to see that is one of the design patterns, history and storytelling. And we can definitely do that through graphics or through display. And I'm sure that Raymond Design is going to talk to you about that, how to make that happen.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else that's a strength of the school? Windows, size of classrooms. Second floor classrooms have big classrooms with big windows. Okay, that's a strength. Any spaces that either teachers or kids particularly like? Quaintness and size is nice. And a courtyard that's usable. Okay, now we've got go. Now we're going. We have a great theater. We could use a better band and chorus area. The auditorium has a nice look and feel. Large windows, and you have an auditorium, which is something that new MSBA buildings do not fund. But and we'll talk about the cafetorium space. They will allow a community to fund an auditorium themselves for 2/3 of the population of the school, but they will not participate in the funding. Okay, and then we come to the challenges, which we talked a little bit about before, but now we can go a little deeper. So it's old and unappealing beyond its useful life. Not enough classrooms. Yeah, you have lots of people traveling. Sounds like cramped classrooms in the basement and sub-basement, and some have no windows. That is definitely something that any new or renovated building is going to address. Accessibility, inconsistent HVAC, and then the lack of space. Air quality, which is more important than it's ever been. Heating issues with different temperature depending on where you are in the building. Yeah. And a lot of this is also connected to unsustainable or waste of energy and unsustainable sort of systems. Okay, not enough classrooms, no AC. Yes, any renovated or new school will have AC or air or some kind of cooling system. Not enough office spaces. Not natural light throughout the building. Yeah, you don't get that borrowed light. It's in those old massive kind of buildings. It's completely undersized. All right. Parking and pickup and drop off space. All right. Okay. Well,
David, can I ask a
yeah.
question?
Sure.
So where there was a lot of talk about collaboration and PLCs, I mean, I've been through the building. It doesn't seem like there's good spaces for that to occur. Is that something that, should be part of the program? And I don't know if it's as simple as, multiple conference rooms or alcoves in the hallways or, smaller sections of the cafeteria. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Gene, could you repeat the beginning of that? The internet went out a little bit on my end.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I missed it as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's, I think when you were talking about what you liked about the educationally, it was, collaboration between teachers and professional learning communities. And I guess, I don't have, how do you do that now? It's probably one of the shortcomings of the building, right? There's nowhere to meet. Or, how would that take shape in a new building? How could we facilitate making that better?
Dedicated spacing for that purpose rather than using a classroom. Right now, we just try and find an open space, and that'll be where the teachers meet. Some teachers are meeting in small little rooms with, again, no windows, dark areas, and it's just not what they deserve, but they do it. And I think having a nice area where there's room to sort of spread out, bring materials, plan lessons, develop projects, things like that would just make life a whole heck of a lot easier.
So if you're familiar with any of those co-sharing
Yes.
companies that are around, that's kind of what I would love to envision, where there's like cubbies set up so you can do individual work, but then maybe you could go and do a conference room or just pop over the cubicle and say, hey, blah, 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 blah. At this,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what I would think.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that, Karen, too, in the design patterns. And that is something that is in the template, the MSBA template for the building. Space for teachers, professional work areas for teachers that can be in sort of in smaller collaboration areas that are maybe located in closer proximity to classrooms, or in larger ones where you can have more of that kind of like co-work space. Okay. And part of the thinking behind that too is that is the desire to improve kind of utilization of classrooms, so that no classroom is empty for more than 15% of the day. So that's 85% utilization. So that when a teacher has a planning period, they can go to one of those spaces and someone else can use the classroom. So, okay, well, let's get to the design patterns. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these, but I'm going to ask you to kind of interact with them. I'll show you that if you see on the bottom right hand side here, you see a heart, a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or a question mark, right? So I'm going to ask that for every slide, if people could just give your top of mind reaction to this design pattern. Now, I want you to keep in mind that we're talking about the design pattern itself and kind of the approach, not the we're showing you specific examples, but if you don't like that particular style of building or that particular color that you're going to see, then don't let that discourage you from giving it a heart or a thumbs up. If it's something that you think would be good for Pickering, then give it a heart and a thumbs up or a thumbs up. If it's something you don't think would be good for Pickering, you can give it a thumbs down. And if it's something that you need to learn more about in order to give a response, you can put a question mark, okay? So I'm gonna spend really just about 30 seconds on each slide. So, and the more kind of feedback we get, the better. So I'm gonna encourage people to really kind of interact with the slides and just, before I move on, give it a, so let me describe. So welcoming arrival, we think about, let's make sure that we can see where the main entrance is and it's easy to find. Let's make sure that there are views into so people can see who's coming into the building. It's nice to have an awning to protect from the weather. It's nice to have places for students or maybe parents to sit and be able to connect while they're waiting to get into the school or while they're waiting to be picked up. This connects to the idea of security as well. We want to have a clear sort of entry sequence that is where there's good visibility to people coming to the building and good views into or good access to that entry sequence. Now security, so I should say that I have 4 sections of these and they each have 9. I think the last one maybe has 10. So we've got 39 yeah, 37 examples we're sharing with you. The first section, these first 9, I'm calling givens because they're going to be things that we're going to consider anyway. These are just things that any new or renovated building are going to be thinking about. Of course, we want to have a welcoming arrival sequence. Now we need to think about safety, but as connected to that, we want to make the entry experience one that feels warm and inviting. Now, another given is that we'll be thinking about both security and welcome so that there's, one point of entry into the school. There may be a second entry if there's a community entry after hours or something like that. But that entry is controlled likely through a vestibule. We're going to have passive and active measures of security, and we're going to be able to buzz people in or not. And oftentimes schools, well, in this school, you can see there's in the vestibule, there's a bank teller window. So if a student forgets their lunch, the parent doesn't have to actually go into the building to drop it off, or if they have something to drop off. And then many schools, after school is closed, after the doors are closed in the morning, in order to get into the school, you have to walk in through the administrative suite and walk in through the main office. So those are just some of the measures that we think about in terms of security and welcome. Another given is agile classrooms. We're going to be talking to you about what is your version of an agile classroom, but an agile classroom has good natural light. It has good access to technology and power. It has modular furniture and that may not be one size fits all, but you can rearrange it in different ways. These are showing larger desks, but you could have smaller desks, individual desks that you could arrange in different ways as well. These are ergonomic plastic molded chairs that can be stacked and moved to the side. They're also really comfortable and you can fidget in them, which helps you concentrate. And we want to think about good storage. So especially if you're doing more project-based learning, or if it's doing anything engineering or science related, these are sort of whiteboard sliders you can just open up. There's 2 foot of storage in the back of them with rack metal shelving. Now this particular situation here, you see a movable wall in between 2 classrooms, which supports team teaching. And it also gives you some flexibility to suddenly have an 1,800 square foot space if you're doing maybe a presentation or an exhibition at night or something like that. These are expensive. You wouldn't want them unless you were going to use them, but sometimes when we have a sort of neighborhood of classrooms, we like to put one set of movable walls. Another option is to just put a set of double doors in between 2 adjacent classrooms. That's less expensive. We need to be thinking about acoustics. These are very good acoustically rated doors, which is why they're relatively expensive. So agile classrooms, flexible modular furniture. These are just some examples, not necessarily what you would choose, but the idea is that you want your furniture to be flexible and modular so that you can rearrange it in different ways and do it quickly. This is actually the West Bridgewater Middle High School, and they have a variety. This is a 6-8 program, and they've got an area here they call their cyber cafe outside of the library with high top tables that kids absolutely love. They have these kidney shaped or, kind of tables that fit together. They really like them. Some of their chairs even have rocker bases, which they seem to like as well. So, or some of their extended learning areas have some of this kind of upholstered airport grade kind of furniture.
David, can I just ask,
Yeah.
this type of furniture, it looks great. How does it hold up to things like wear and tear, graffiti, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's always there's definitely some really nice looking stuff and modular different size stuff. I wouldn't get caught up in the upholstered part of this. That's not necessarily what we would have, but you can have foam. You can have things that really do withstand student wear and tear and abuse. But
just
that's certainly
quickly-
always a consideration. Yes, Molly.
I was just gonna say that we've had the same furniture since 2016 and it looks great. We don't have any issues with the furniture.
Yeah, great.
It's been
Great.
6 years.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I think especially when things look newer and nicer, I think kids tend to rise to the occasion, and they want to keep it looking nice. Push in special education. This is just another given. These are not round rooms. This is what we call a bubble diagram. We're actually going to be doing these diagrams next time we meet, or for the last workshop. But this is just the notion that Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is going to make sure that all of the kind of small group special ed rooms, unless they are sub-separate classrooms, are going to be interspersed throughout the school and connected to the general ed classrooms, so that kind of targeted intervention can happen in seamless ways. And that might take the form of breakout rooms that are in between classrooms where small group work can happen, but they're immediately connected to classrooms. And we see this quite a lot in some of our newer buildings. And so, but that's just if there's sub-separate programs or certain areas that you want to be in quieter or more private areas, that's certainly something that the design team will talk to you about. Cafetorium multi-purpose space. So this is the kind of space that the MSBA will support. You can see that it's not your old version of multi-purpose cafetorium. It's got some very nice kind of finishes. It can have really good acoustics. It has a full stage and lighting that goes along with it. And what's nice about it is that it serves as a multi-purpose room for the school and also for the community. And some communities use it as a revenue generating, where they rent it out on weekends. And so, we'll be talking to you about that multi-purpose space. Really, any of the big ticket spaces like your library, media commons, your gym, and your cafetorium, we're going to try and make as multi-purpose as possible so they can support larger group gatherings. Oftentimes in these areas, like you might have a movable wall that comes across the stage and then the stage can serve as another music room or a drama room, and it could be connected to the choral room that's in back of the stage. So there are some nice adjacencies that we can think about to actually connect that whole sort of foster and support the performance based stuff within the school. We're still in the given section. This is back at the Westport Middle High School, and this is the notion of community access. So this school, you can see the gym, their very beautiful sort of cafeteria space and auditorium, local cable access TV, and band room are all located along this main spine. The class areas, neighborhoods can be closed off completely. So after hours and on weekends, this can be accessible by the community as a community center. This is appealing to a lot of communities, especially as they're trying to pass these projects. This was going to be a renovation, but they ultimately were able to pass this as a new building because people were excited about access to this space, which is a very beautiful space. And then finally, sustainability. Any new or renovated building is going to be LEED rated or mass chips. It's going to have passive and active measures for sustainability in terms of materials, in terms of photovoltaics, potentially geothermal wells. That's a discussion that the design team will have with your district about how far you want to go with this. But there are certain minimal standards that the MSBA is going to hold you to. And there are long-term cost benefits that, you know, they'll do calculations and see how they outweigh the shorter term costs up front. So I just introduced these 9, and they're all givens. We're going to be thinking about them, and but as you think about what struck you most and got you most excited as you think about Pickering Middle School, if you could just rate them, then on a scale of 1 to you know, just the ones you're most excited about. It's always interesting to see what really rises to the top as being most resonant for a particular school. And the other thing I'm going to do is I have a scoring system where I'm going to see which things come out on top here. I'm going to add them to the number of hearts and thumbs up that each design pattern gets. And in the end, we're going to see what are the design patterns that kind of rise to the top. And that's going to be our design patterns 1.0. When we get into our small groups, you're going to be prioritizing your top like 10 to 12 design patterns, and that's going to be our design patterns 2.0. And we'll see how much overlap there is. There's usually a lot of overlap. So I'm not sure what my base number is here. I'm going to wait for another moment and see if we get more than 7 responses. We've been, okay, good. Yeah, all right. So cafetorium trending at the top, security and welcome, and agile classrooms welcoming arrival, all sort of getting higher votes, and sustainability. Again, these are things we're going to be considering, but just good to know what you're most excited about. So we're going to go to the next group. So this is the second set of 9. So we talked about welcoming arrival. This is more about greeting and gatekeeping, so that when you enter into the school, that you have a sense of arrival, that there is, it's easy to see where to go. You're being monitored, of course, coming into the school, but it's easy to see where to go. There may be hopefully a friendly face that you can check in with, but also there's a sense of, you know, place where you can sort of essentially hang out. If you're waiting, this is Mount Greylock High School. This is a renovation of a building with a new addition. And here is Lunenburg Middle High School. You can see there's quite a lot of transparency and visibility here. Here we've got notice boards with all the fun things that are happening, all the interesting things that are happening at the school. So it's nice because when you first enter into a building, that's your, you know, your first impression of the school. So it's nice to be able to really sort of get a very positive impression. Wayfinding and streetscapes. So the idea here is that when you're walking through the building, And this connects to the idea of universal design for learning, universal design, where we want to make the building easy to navigate, give people visual cues so we can use color, we can use materials to differentiate different areas. We can also, someone had talked about the present building is dark on the interior of the building. One way that we can get light into the interior is through borrowed light. So choosing where we have transparency and visibility, maybe into some interesting things happening. This is a middle school in California, and this is their makerspace that you're looking into here. And here there are views into teacher offices. Actually, those are views in and out. Now there are blinds if people want privacy, but it also means there's all these eyes on the street, and especially in a middle school, that can, develop more independence and agency because kids are informally supervised and everybody feels like they're known and connected. This is clusters of learning, and you can see that there's a lot of overlap in these because we can look at community access as a cluster of learning. And in this case, this is the Denver School of Science and Technology. And they've got sort of the academic wing of the school that can be completely closed off. And this becomes a community center with the gym and the cafeteria. But they've also got these clusters of connected classrooms. So this school has a science focus, and you can see all these orange science labs are in the main circulation with lots of visibility into them because there's all these interesting things going on in there. And then there are classroom neighborhoods that are grade based, so that these are multidisciplinary neighborhoods. Each has their own teacher planning office here with a small office, private office, and then a shared office, as well as an open kind of extended learning area. They call it a studio. So these create these kind of clusters, and they also have access actually to some outdoor spaces. Connected to this is the idea of classroom neighborhoods. So this is back at West Bridgewater Middle High School. What we see here is what would otherwise be what we call a double loaded corridor, where you have classrooms on either side. But one of the classrooms, one of the teeth has been taken out, if you will, and that creates sort of a centrally located hub, sense of place. There also are windows that have blinds, but that can look into this so that this becomes sort of the living room of this neighborhood of classrooms. It's not a whole lot more square footage. It's a lot less institutional because you're not just walking down hallway after hallway. It connects to wayfinding because it creates sort of different spaces. Here's a teacher planning area. So you have a collection of teachers here. They've got a planning area here. We've got special education rooms that are integrated within this neighborhood. We've got bathrooms that are nearby. So it's kind of like a one-stop shopping that creates. Now, what you really create here is a sense of ownership and belonging for the people that occupy this space. And in a middle school, we know that's particularly important. Extended learning spaces. So what might that space that we just saw here, this extended learning space, here's some examples of things that are, like that, where, you can have a gathering maybe of 2 classes or do some presentations. It's nice to have audio visual there, of course. But there are also venues and areas where students might be doing independent or small group work, that is in close proximity to their classrooms. And part of this also is the notion of using every square inch of a building, because 30% of a building oftentimes is the circulation through it. So if we can optimize the use of that and it's all fully wired, then it's a nice approach to also to just giving you much more flexibility in terms of the types of spaces that you have available to you as a teacher and as a student. Breakout and quiet spaces. So the other thing is we can think about nooks in the hallway. I know that visual supervision is very important, but you could even have some nooks in classrooms. This is the middle school in Beverly Middle School, where there's a a small group room that's located between two classrooms with sliding glass doors in between so that you can open them up to each classroom or not. Again, it gives you a lot of flexibility. You can have small group work in there. You can have testing. You can have de-escalation area. You know, if a kid just needs to be focused and alone. And there's visual access into that. And here we have spatial synergy, another way to look at it, where we can think of locating classrooms not necessarily in a straight line shot, but located in a cluster so that they relate to each other. And in this cluster of spaces, you've got, and again, it's no more square footage than we would normally see in a traditional school. We've got these 5 classrooms located around the central space that now is a furnished and usable space, electrical that comes down from the ceiling. In this case, we've got a fabrication lab that's right next door. And so that's connected and it's shared by a number of these neighborhoods. We've also got areas out in the hallway that are open and also a breakout room. So again, lots of different scales of spaces for students to use. And this might be something that, you know, this is a high school, but we can certainly do these in middle schools as well. It is definitely a different culture where you have the idea of kids being able to go beyond containment within the school walls. I can tell you that during the pandemic, this is a really nice way to spread kids out when necessary. And it's also, again, just a nice way to get lots of variety of space. The idea of anywhere, anytime learning is another way that we can think about every square inch of the building being used and having sort of these areas where we have a variety of here's a neighborhood of classrooms at one of the high-tech high schools in or middle schools in California. We've got teachers' offices, we've got classrooms here with some windows looking in, and then a living room area that is shared by them with different kinds of furniture. And here's another extended learning area, and here's some more breakout rooms. So, and the heart of the school. We think of, you know, a lot of schools you go to and there's no there. If there is, it's often the cafeteria, and it may not be centrally located, and it may feel institutional. So we can think about how do we create a hub sort of that really feels like the heart of the school. We're often thinking about creating these smaller hubs for these learning neighborhoods, but how about how kids connect to the larger whole? So, and this is also a space that's a multi-purpose venue. You can see here in both of these situations what we call these education stairs, where we've got, you know, the ability to have small performances there. Kids also love to spread out on these things, and if they're eating at lunch or if they're using their technology. All right, so that's that set. And after we rate these, we're going to take a break for 10 minutes and come back. All right, so clusters of learning. and extended learning spaces and classroom neighborhoods. Yeah, I mean, especially a lot of people think about this as kind of like a middle school kind of arrangement of spaces. What's interesting is that we're doing it at a lot of high schools now, to try and create a variety of spaces and make best use of the in-between spaces that would otherwise just be hallways. All right. So it's 7:05. Let's come back at 7:15. We'll go through another 2 sets of this, and then we'll get into some small groups and do some more prioritizing, and we'll get you up by 8 o'clock. All right. And I have not checked the chat, but if anybody has any questions, certainly let me know. Jess, were you able to find the slides? Jess Burrell.
Yes, thank you. I found it.
Okay, good. Thanks, Jess. Okay, so set number 3, we've got 2 more sets. I'm going to go through these a little bit more quickly so that we can get into our groups. So please be a little quicker on their trigger finger if you can, to say what you like and what you don't. This one is dining as social commons. The idea that in addition to the cafeteria, there may be some of these extended learning spaces that could also be places where dining can happen for smaller venues, especially for students that feel really sort of it's difficult for them to be in a large, very noisy environment. And they could be satellites off of the cafeteria or coves within it, or maybe that's where you have a movable wall or something like that. Media Center Learning Commons. This is the Gibbs Middle School. This is a renovation in Arlington. And the notion here is that, the library is not what we used to think of it as. It's a much more diverse, it's got books, and it's got some quiet areas, but it also, in this case, has a project-based learning mezzanine and a makerspace down below here. It's got access to technology, so lots of different options there. Professional work areas. So this is what we were talking about before, in terms of areas where teachers can go to work. They have a workstation. They may have a locked pedestal, and an area where they can collaborate, but also an area where they can work independently, and then maybe some kitchenette kind of facilities there as well. And again, these could be smaller or larger depending on what your vision for that is. Teacher teaming. These are examples of classroom neighborhoods where we have collection there, where we have a team. So this is a 7th grade team, cross-discipline, where we got a math and science teacher and English and social studies teacher, and they actually have, in this particular case, they have some movable walls between their classroom. And again, that's expensive, but here we have then this shared area, and what this is really a neighborhood, because this is a cul-de-sac. You wouldn't pass through this space unless you belonged there. So there is a strong sense of ownership and connection that is established for the students and teachers. Flexible science lab. So the MSBA is going to require that all of your gas and water for your science labs are around the perimeter. You're going to get square footage for a science, technology, engineering lab. And so we call these high intensity labs, and things that we want to make them as flexible as possible. So the tables are on wheels, and when you're doing labs, they're at the edges, or it could be sort of more of an engineering type of lab. STEM and STEAM and maker spaces, thinking about spaces that support STEM and STEAM and hands-on learning. They don't need to have a lot of bells and whistles, just good sized spaces with shelving for bins, good lighting, big flat table surfaces, and access to electrical and to things like your 3D printers or laser cutters. This one is STEM and STEAM adjacency. So in the West Bridgewater Middle High School, we've got a situation where just through adjacencies, they've created a STEAM wing. And so we've got the computer lab and robotics lab or makerspace, their art rooms. Right up above are their science rooms and their math rooms. So you've got sort of, and then there's a small atrium that they share. So just through those adjacencies, they've created kind of this innovation or STEM hub. And speaking of innovation hubs, this is an intermediate elementary school where they took the spaces like the Learning Commons, which is their library, their art room, their innovation studio, which is their maker space. They have an outdoor classroom, a music room, and a SPED resource room that are all co-located in what they call their innovation hub, which is also, by the way, a really nice thing for after-school programming, because you've got this kind of place where that can happen in a really contained way. Oops. And enrichment spaces. So definitely thinking about your facilities for fitness, your art, your music. Those are all gonna, hopefully be located in ways that they're easy to access by students. And in a new building, we certainly want to make them centrally located with sort of neighborhood hubs off of the periphery. So it really reduces the amount of hallway and the amount of time that it takes for kids to get to these shared spaces. So we're going to rank these quickly. Yes, and I'm sure, given your lack of those spaces, that the enrichment and science spaces are something that are very appealing. So teacher teaming, enrichment, flexible science labs, media center, learning commons, all kind of trending towards the top. Okay, one more set, and then we're gonna get into some small groups. Let's talk about these. This one we're calling visible learning and transparency, and I'm showing different examples of it. This is something that may feel, people are concerned about in a lockdown situation, or they're concerned about distractibility. Anywhere that we have windows, we're gonna have blinds. But what building in some level of transparency gives you is that ability to create connectivity beyond the classroom. So you're not just like closing the classroom door and then you're not connected to anyone. And when we have these extended learning spaces, you're not going to send your kids out there if you can't sort of informally kind of keep an eye on them. So lots of schools are thinking about how to build that in appropriate ways. They don't have to be huge windows. You can see here an example where we just got a side light that's about 18 inches wide, and then we've got a window in the door. And you may not have them, in classrooms, but you may have them in a space like this, which is a maker space, because you want to showcase what's going on in those spaces and make the learning visible and kind of exciting. Display and exhibition. thinking about areas for 2D and 3D display that can be more formal. This is a fire code issue, but in a sprinklered building, not so much so. And you can also have flat screen monitors that you can use for exhibition. And it's a big way to kind of like create a sense of what's being valued in the school. Storytelling and history. So we've talked about this before. So, you know, being able to talk about the history of the community, of the school, particularly in a new school environment. And these are pretty much museum quality. We can do them in different ways. They can just be done through super graphics. They can be in a sort of key area of the school. Branding and identity. So branding and identity is using color and materials and maybe messaging or super graphics to create spaces. Now, they don't have to be this bright, but these are just some examples. So in a school, especially in a renovation, we often like to do this because it helps us differentiate spaces, and it's a good way to give a facelift to older parts of a building. But it also helps to differentiate spaces so that you know where you are in the building. A lot of times when you're in a school and everything looks the same, you feel like you're in The Shining because it's like it's just like long corridors with lockers, right? And so this is creating a sense of place. Distributed resources. We saw this picture before. It's one of the high-tech middle schools in California, where all of these dark green spaces are adult occupied spaces. So as students are walking down the hallway, they've got 5 sets of adult eyes on them informally. We've got teachers' offices. Here's the administrative reception area, the dean's office, conference area, the IT director, and it's really connecting kids to the adults that are working with them, but in informal ways that allow you to then just have a real strong sense of eyes on the street. Effective storage. We want to think about storage in classrooms as well as storage for students. You know, some schools are really veering away towards lockers, or at least not lockers for every student. But when we do have them, we want them to be well sized. This is a nice alternative because they're relatively deep, but they can fit a backpack and you can stuff a coat in there easily. But also we want to think about storage in a classroom situation where maybe behind those sliding whiteboard panels, we've got areas for technology storage, areas for material storage that are easy to cover up, or good closets in a classroom. A lot of times we're putting sinks in classrooms. We're putting sinks in pretty much every elementary school classroom. It's required now in Massachusetts through the MSBA process, but we oftentimes put sinks in classrooms because it allows you to more effectively do project-based learning. Varied performance venues, thinking about areas within the school like your cafetorium or sort of extended learning spaces where you can set up for group interactions and gatherings and performances and presentations, and thinking about that happening in multiple places throughout the school. Indoor-outdoor connections. We certainly thought a lot about this in the last few years. Here's an example of an interior courtyard. A lot of times interior courtyards kind of become wastelands, but so you want to be really careful about what kind of planting you're doing there, that it's easy to maintain. But this is a very nice sort of contained kind of courtyard that is off of the cafeteria, but it's also off of a makerspace over here. And here's an example of a makerspace where you actually have a garage door that goes right outside. So when you're doing bigger projects, you can extend the learning outside. And outdoor learning and gathering. So the idea of having an outdoor classroom that's fully wired, or spaces where students can sit or adults can sit outside and still be covered from the elements, but use their technology or eat their lunch or whatever. Okay. And finally, this is the last one, the idea of building as teacher. So we talked about sustainability. A lot of schools are thinking about the building itself becoming a teaching tool, so that in these instances, you can actually see what's in the walls. You can also see sort of the inside the mechanical room, or some of the systems are actually color coded and labeled. We also can have a panel at the front of the school where you can see the energy being used and the energy that is coming into the building in real time. And that was that. And we're going to rate these, and then we're going to get into our small groups. So outdoor learning and gathering, definitely something that we are thinking a lot about. We're definitely trying to maximize the use of every site and extend the learning to the outdoors. And there's a lot of research that shows also that's really good for learning, for adults and for students to get fresh air and refresh. Okay. All right, so what we are going to do now, for those of you that that didn't get the email that I sent with the handout of the design patterns, I sent a PDF that has all of the design patterns that we just went over. And in the chat, if you go to the chat, you're going to see that that I posted it there, so you can open it up. Once you get into your small groups, you're not going to have access to it. So if you don't have it, please open it now. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get into groups for about 25 minutes. And in just one sec, you're going to get an invitation to a small group, and it's going to be facilitated by one of the design team members. And what we'd like you to do is kind of individually review the listing of priority design patterns, maybe not for 10 minutes because we don't have that much time, but for 4 or 5 minutes. And then as a group, you can also put these up, your facilitator can put them up on the screen. And as a group, you can discuss them. Your goal is to think about what are your top, say, 10 to 12 patterns. Now, you may like more than that. We're trying to figure out what your top priorities are. As you know, there's lots of connections among these, so you can actually group them together and get a lot more than 10 in there if you want to put bullet points underneath. So that's the task. We're going to come back in 25 minutes. We'll just have a few minutes after that. We'll do a quick closing activity. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these lists. I'm going to see what rises to the surface. And next time we meet, we're going to check that we got it right. Any questions about that before we do it? Anybody not have the handout?
David, when did you put it in the chat?
I put it in the chat over the break. So it's there. It should be there. I see it there. It's Pickering design pattern handout. Do you see it?
I don't see it in my chat.
Oh, interesting. I'm going to send it one more time.
I don't see it either.
Oh, goodness. Huh.
I think it was just the workshop that was sent, David. The
There's
notes.
I see it in the chat. Oh, you know what? It's a direct message.
I think you sent it to me.
I sent it to you, Jess. All right, you got a bunch of them. All right, there you go. Okay. Do people see it now? All right, everybody, please open it up on your screen. You're going to get an invitation to your small group. I'll come and visit. I'll let you know when we've got 5 minutes left, and enjoy. Okay, welcome back, folks. I know you could have talked longer in your groups, People seemed like they were having great conversations. I just wanted to be very mindful of time. So it's 8 o'clock. I wanted to do one thing while I remember. If we could take a group snapshot, that would be great. So everybody can look at the camera and smile a little bit.
Oh, God.
All right. And then I do have a closing activity, which is just gonna take just a second and then you can leave after. I'm gonna share another slide. I'm gonna give you the option to share your top 3 to 5 design patterns that you're most excited about after our conversations tonight. And then when we meet next time, I'm gonna have all of this compiled in terms of the things that have that really kind of stood out, and we'll check in with you and see if we got it right. And then we're also going to be next time talking about guiding principles for this project that are going to be big picture priorities. And we're going to be doing some bubble diagramming where you can actually bubble diagram some of these neighborhoods we're talking about, or bubble diagram how the spaces in the whole school are connected to each other. All right, so thank you very much for being with us tonight, and I'm going to share my screen now. And you'll go to Mentimeter again. The code is up at the top, and I'm going to leave this up here for now so that you can reference them. Not that these are the, you can just so you have them in top of mind, and you can share the ones that you're most excited about. And in a minute, I'll scroll over and we'll see. I think this is a word cloud we're creating, and we're going to see where all the overlap is. To the extent that you can use the same language that's here, if that is the design pattern that you're prioritizing, that'll be good because it'll make it bigger as it comes up on the word cloud. We'll see how many people are opting for it. And I'm gonna scroll over to see what we got happening here. And if you see things there that you want to accentuate, you can do that. And for our small group facilitators, if you could just email me when you get a chance, your small group's priority listing of design patterns, that would be great. I'm gonna stop sharing now, but you should still be able to add to the list that's still up there in presentation mode. So thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you at the last workshop.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, great job, David. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.
Sorry, David, I'm still
Yeah.
meditating.
How did that go with your group?
Great. I mean, these are wonderful because they get people thinking.
Yeah. I mean, I struggle because I think it would be better to have those groups meet for 40 minutes because those are really good conversations.
Yes, that's actually not a bad idea.
So I think I just need to kind of go through them fast. I went through the second set faster.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be okay. So I think I just got to go through the first few sets faster and maybe not have as many prompts in the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, it really helps them.
Yeah.
Some of them are also kind of the same.
They are, so they're different. I mean, I think maybe some of them are a little bit too similar. Like there's a lot of cluster stuff.
Yes.
So I think I could do away with some of those.
One of the things I was asking my group with the clusters, when we did Thurgood Marshall, it was about control, like we would never send kids out in the hallway, to do projects. So I'd be interested, but
are there extended learning areas in
no, there were double loaded corridors, there were clusters. Well, there were science and 3 academic and a sped room together, but no gathering spaces.
Yeah.
Oh,
wow.
So I think, but they were really attracted, our group, right?
They were.
To the clusters and academic clusters.
Is that going to be a problem if you're looking at Pickering as a model?
I don't think so.
I mean, if you're looking at Thurgood Marshall as a model?
No, I don't think so. I think there's flexibility.
Okay. Well, certainly more interesting for you guys.
Yeah, definitely. And probably better for the kids. Anyway, David, I won't keep you. So thanks for everything.
All right. Okay. Tim, where did you just suddenly appear from? It looks like you came up from the ground there.
You're muted, Tim. You're muted.
I just leaned back too far, so my camera doesn't pick me up again anymore.
All right. Okay, guys.
Bye.
Later.
So
Bye.
I will send out that show by the Wednesday, before the community meeting. All right.
All right, and then if you could just send me the link tomorrow so I can upload it to YouTube. People actually do watch it, apparently.
Oh, okay. I
think some of the committee members and some of the teachers have been watching it after the fact.
Okay. I'm going to put a note here to send you the link.
What happens with the breakout spaces? Are they also filmed or?
No, they're not.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, usually we're bumbling around.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
You're much smoother, David.
Yeah, you don't want to, it's always, you have to remember they are recording, I told Lynn once, which actually, since we're recording right now, I'll stop this conversation.